Добрий день всім, хто
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Maxim Burdavitsan. I'm an expert in the local governance services of the USA-supported program Dobra. And today we're starting our presentation of the manual Theory and Practice of Improvement for the Local Self-Government. And this is actually the final step in our 5-year work, final output. And today we had invited interesting speakers, and we are going to present this manual to you. In course of the presentation, we will show the link going to which you will be able to upload this manual. I would like to introduce today's participants. First of all, Mr. Brian Campbell, the leader of the USAID Dobra program. Then Mr. Sergei Shashov, Director General of the Directorate of Local Self-Governance from the Ministry of Territories and Communities. Then Ms. Kluchnik, USAID Dobra consultant and co-author of the manual. Then Ms. Marina Kulinic, executive expert from the Ministry of Culture and Informational Policy of Ukraine. Then Mr. Ruslan Shafranovich, representative of Ivanivsk Amalgamated Community from Ternopil region, and Mr. Rabakon, deputy head of the Association of Amalgamated Communities. And the floor now goes to Mr. Brian Campbell. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maxime. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As you know, I'm sure, the Dobre program is funded by USAID, and we've had the overall task of helping territorial communities that formed and come out of the decentralization process to meet the challenges that decentralization brings, but also take advantage of the opportunities that it gives them. I think decentralization makes wonderful sense for Ukraine and for a variety of reasons. Philosophically, it supports the idea that people should have the ability to have a more effective voice in the policies and decisions that affect their countries and their communities. And it's an important element of democracy. And local self-governance at the community level is extremely important. And I think it's where a democratic society fully begins, if you will, and contributes to the overall democracy of the country. Practically speaking, decentralization makes a lot of sense as well. Dobre has been working since 2016. It has worked already very closely with 75 communities in 7 oblasts. And one thing we have found is that communities throughout Ukraine are very different from each other. They're different in the priorities that they have, the needs they have, and the resources they have. And we think that decentralization recognizes that the people in the best position to decide what to do in their community, what their community needs, are the people who live there. So Dobre has been working with communities, the 75 partner communities that we've been working with now for some time, and also the 25 new communities in 3 additional oblasts, to, among other things, help the local governments identify in a participatory way with their citizens what is of most importance to the citizens in terms of services, and then help realize that. Providing services to citizens is an important function of local government, and ultimately everything that we're doing, everything that the government is doing, is about making the lives of people in Ukraine, making them better. Service delivery is an important component of that. Now, since 2016, Dobre has worked with many communities and has accumulated a lot of experience with the communities in developing different kinds of projects to improve service delivery, whether it's in waste management, improving roads, improving the water supply, or other areas that the communities have identified as being most important. So this manual is a way of encapsulating, of capturing that experience so that other communities can take advantage of it. One thing I urge everyone to do is to acquaint themselves with the guidance of the manual, because I think it will be very useful for everyone who's concerned with these kinds of issues. And I also encourage the communities to learn and work with each other, because they all have experience in one area or another that might prove valuable to another community. And that's all a tremendous resource. So I'm just very pleased that we could have this session today. I want to thank all the distinguished representatives from the ministries, from the association, from our partner communities who are taking part. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for your support to Dobre. And I hope you'll find that this manual is useful and the session is useful, so we can go ahead and continue making these important reforms in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Дякуємо, Брайан.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I would like to remind to all those who had just joined us online that you may put your comments in chat. Also, you may ask your questions in Q&A section in this video conference, and we will provide you with the answers. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Sergei Sharshov, Director General of the Directorate on Local Self-Governance from the Ministry of Communities and Territories. This ministry had done much on the path towards the decentralization reform implementation, and those successes which we mentioned today, in a big deal was gained due to the ministry. Thank you for invitation. I'm happy that today we all are presenting this manual, which will be very useful for all the communities. And I would like to thank to the Dobre program for all that intense cooperation and actually long-term cooperation in the area of decentralization reform implementation. I'm happy that Dobre program cooperates directly with the local communities. They do a lot of, so to say, field work, and this manual will provide practical assistance to those communities which had no experience with the program. And almost 1,500 communities in Ukraine which had gained a lot of new responsibilities will probably face a lot of difficulties, having no experience how to act in new conditions. Nevertheless, all of them have to become successful for the sake of their citizens. By the way, the principles upon which the decentralization is based, this is the subsidiarity and self-governance principles, are aimed at provision of high-quality services and creation of decent level of life in all the communities. This is actually the overall objective of the self-government reform. And I believe that to this end, there's a very manual will provide a lot of help to those communities who strive to deliver good public services to improve the well-being, the life standards in their communities, and thus they will raise the future ratings in elections for the local self-governments. And I also believe that the members of local communities would also see how useful and practical this manual is. I believe that in general, this manual will allow to improve implementation of this very important decentralization reform, which has such a big impact at the local well-being improvement, the improvement of life standards at the local level. I'm very grateful for this manual related to the delivery of public services. Thank you, Serhiy. And now let's continue. I agree with the previous presenters that a huge amount of work was carried out. We had cooperation first with 75 communities, later another 25 communities joined this team, and working on the manual, summarizing our experience, we tried to use plain language to stack with the very concise style. And despite all our efforts to make the narration as concentrated as possible, nevertheless, we stuck with 2 volumes. The first volume is devoted to the theory of local governance, while the second volume is devoted to the practical issues. And with this, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Natalia Kluchnik, who will explain in more detail what is in this manual. Thank you, Maxim. I would like to thank for this opportunity to contribute to such an important task. It's a big honor for me to present today this big piece of work which was carried out by a team of excellent experts under the guidance of the Dobra program. And actually, not only the local communities had been educated and trained in course of the program. The experts have got precious experience too, and this experience is very special. And at some stage we found out that we could not but share this experience, and in course of our work, at some moments we tried to compress as much experience as possible in a very small space. And thank you to the Dobra program team who guided us at all the stages. The manual has its story of creation. At the first stage, 75 communities participated. At the next stage, another 25, and actually 128 plans for the local community development were developed and approved. By the way, all the services which are described in the manual were chosen by the local communities. And later on, we understood that the list of services could be extended because we inherited the perception of local self-government services as purely municipal services like utilities and public services like documents administration, etc., while educational, cultural, etc. services remain beyond the attention. And the first book is about the notion of the public services and the perception of them and the plan for public services in a community. And this first volume consists of 3 big sections: the area of public service, the notion of public service, and implementation of the public service plan. And it explains how this is all related to the legislative base, to the regulatory environment, and how this legislation could be properly used. So we started from the notion of the public service, and we had to double check the whole regulatory base, the whole core of legislation to understand what does it mean. And we found out that there are public services, state services, and publicly important services or municipal services. While we do not have such things as municipalities, the word municipality in our legislation, although at the colloquial level we use this expression municipal services and understand that these are services provided by local government to all members of the community. And actually, this review of the definitions allowed us to understand what we mean under the local or public services. These are services provided to the local community. While local community is a vital organism and its needs can change. That's why the list of services may also change. The Constitution of Ukraine guarantees access to public services to all the citizens of Ukraine, and there's directed the use of proper juridical language and the use of civil code in our manual. And in the first volume of our manual, you will find out that municipal services or public services should be funded from some budget, and unless this is the state or national budget, then this should be the local budget which pays for the service. And as Serhiy Shechov and Maxim mentioned, the decentralization reform was aimed at the new quality of local self-governance was the overall objective of decentralization reform. That actually means that they would be able to make decisions about allocation of their available resources for the needs of the community members. You may try to find this in the first volume of our manual. More detailed definitions of each section of services, like educational, cultural services, could be found in specific laws devoted to those services. That's why we had to examine these special laws, like the construction norms, etc. And our findings are presented in the second volume of the manual. Thus, the first volume will be useful when formulating your local policies, and you may use it. Now on the screen you see the chapter, the section about offset between the needs of communities and the resources or budgets of the community. Of course, there were always a long list of wishes of local self-governments, while this was not related to the available resources. And actually, just making the ends meet for the local community is not a good solution. It's not a good way out for each government. The issue is how to earn money for the community for the development. And in this manual, you may find how to formulate your vision, your goals, your objectives for the development of local community, for earning money for this development, and how to select among the priorities. For example, if you wish to develop cultural services, and via development of cultural services, you may reach good development of tourist services, while tourist services may contribute to the economic development of the community. And we have a good example of such developments in some programs, and this is a good example how you can do much with limited resources instead of big investments into infrastructure, etc. When shaping your development plans, you have to stack with a broad inclusivity, that is, involve as many people as possible to the discussion around the services. And we found out that this brought very positive results when many people are united with the idea of producing some joint result, that is, how to balance the needs, the wishes, the vision with the limited resources. This allows them to own the process and to change their attitudes. The development program should be sustainable and coherent. Unless the all the policies are coherent between themselves and are not coherent with the strategic objectives of the central government, then this local development plan has no perspective. It's actually like a tree of our needs and capacities. So the needs which should be reflected in the development plan could not be developed without any surveys or questionnaires at the local level. And then in order to allow broad inclusivity, we have to speak with people with plain, with decent, understandable language. And this requires building up good communication. So these main messages, which I have just mentioned, they are mentioned as components of the plan. The plan is a universal tool. And this is not about just those services which you see in the first slides. This is about all the services which are top priorities for the community. But the plan should not be used for this emergency solutions. Many plans which had been introduced at the very first stages later on were reviewed and made more smart and more comprehensive. I won't describe this in more detail and would not speak much about the plan. It has a lot of specificities, and you will see them in the manual. Actually, you can start from the definition of the key service, then establish the working group, then assign the responsibilities, launch communication, organize public hearings and discussions. Actually, at all those stages, you may face some problems. Quite often, local communities stated that people were very inertial, not very much interested in participation, and we encouraged them to approach to people more proactively, and the result was good. Then about surveys. Surveys were carried out also at the stage of strategic plans formation and with the purposes of the services improvement. Those services which were selected by the communities required the understanding of the baseline of the service in the community, and as well as understanding whether people truly needed it. And we started with manual service, while later on we launched the automated service application and automated survey application. And in this survey, there is no such question as yes or no. There are the questions, what do you know about that? How much you are satisfied, how much you are dissatisfied, whether you are interested in involvement into this or that type of activity. And Dobra Social both had developed this electronic service system, which could be used for their strategic plan formation. It is quite simple in operation and very user-friendly. You can easily produce your own list of questions which you would ask to people and easily use this tool. So the next is the track, what we want to reach, how we would move in that direction, and what should be the measurable results. So where we are now, where we would like to be, and how we can reach this, and what should be the stages for reaching that. This brings in the working group, etc. So all that questions are actually stages and recommendations, how to gain data, how to establish a working group, how to assign roles, how to analyze, how systematize the opinions after public survey, what is SWOT analysis, the service should be quality and accessible, but what does it mean, good quality and good accessibility? Sometimes the communities are able to design projects but cannot find the development component in those projects. What advantages would this policy bring for the community, etc.? So these are all rather useful recommendations, practical recommendations for the communities, how to develop the plan. The second part are practical services. Some aspects were not chosen by the Dobra program communities, and when we believed that this or that aspect was very useful, we included experience of other communities, not participants of the Dobra program. And social, medical, educational, including school and preschool services, water supply and water treatment, lighting services, transport infrastructure, maintenance, organization of passenger transportation, solid waste management, organization of cultural services, etc. This is the list of services which to which the communities express their interest. And in this manual, you may find description of the service, the meaning of the service, the most common problems experienced, who are service deliverers, who are service receivers, who is authorized to deliver the service according to legislation, what are the regulations for the service delivery, and regulation of the service capacity. For example, you may build up a good road leading to nowhere, or you can build up an excellent facility, but in 10 years there would be nobody to use this facility in that very location. And in order to do this in this way, we have to analyze the today's situation, the baseline, and then formulate the strategic goals for each service. This is actually the objectives tree or goals tree. Then we may check this against service standards, both in Ukraine and at the European or international level. I will very briefly describe the fact that this manual includes a lot of pictures, graphs, figures, maps, etc. For example, mapping of the healthcare services and elements of the model offered for this territory in the nearest future. The same is true for the public transport. This is a figure showing how public transport services is shaped. Convenient network, environmentally safe mode, the staff list, etc. The same approach is taken for the sports services. Here you can immediately see the examples. This is an example of the road infrastructure. Many communities in Ukraine, and in particular in Dobra program, all the communities mentioned that they had the problems with roads. The roads of local importance today are in difficult condition, in hard condition. That's why many communities chose for that services. Actually, you can find QR codes, then scan them, and immediately go to the service that you need. Also, I would like to thank especially to Maxim Burdavitsyn, Alexander Muratov, Marazyuk, Shevchenko, Peragova for the contribution to this work. And having created this huge document, even a bigger team of the Dobra program was involved into reading, editing, advising as to the manual. And I would like to thank to Vanessa Vanayan, who shared this methodology with us at the very beginning, and used it, this methodology in the communities of Ukraine, which resulted in writing of this manual. And with this, I would like to finish, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you, Natalia. As of the moment, we do not have any questions, and you are right that it's better to read once instead of having heard it a lot of times. We are open to cooperation with many communities, with all communities. There are our contact details, and if you have any questions or requests about improvement of your local services, feel free to contact us. Well, and now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Marina Kulinic, executive of the expert group leader, in coordination with the regions from the Ministry of Culture and Informational Policy. Due to the Ukrainian Cultural Fund, this methodology was introduced to 28, almost 30 communities which were not members of the Dobre program, but they wanted to improve their cultural services, and due to that, they were able to improve cultural services. Marina? Something is with the mic. Thank you, Natalia, for such a detailed presentation. I am happy to be present here today. I believe that this manual is to become a widely used book in all the local communities because it deals with a huge range of possible local services. And I'm happy that cultural services had become an important part of it, and that Dobra program paid attention at these types of services. This means that there is a demand on cultural services, and that culture as an area has been being developed. And actually, culture is that very thing which brings community together. We can be brought together by two things, either common tragedy or common joy. And let it be common joy, that is, common cultural events which bring us together. For example, recently on Troitsky Fair, we had a bright celebration where they presented local poetry and the local amateur singers, dancers, etc. And that local community, with all its settlements, all the villages and towns, showed a high level of unity, actually. This was a happy response to the fears of local population when they amalgamated some years ago. There were big fears that they would be joined to the city, to the nearest city, while now they see themselves as a separate big community. When I started to work in the Ministry of Culture, we immediately asked the question, what does it mean, a cultural service? And I am very happy that today we are presenting a manual which is very applicable. Quite recently, the president had signed the law which provides a new definition for the cultural service and which would allow more comfortable services, cultural services. And also this law introduces the standards for cultural services and requires comfortable conditions for the cultural service deliverers, for the staff who works for the delivery of cultural services. Our local communities had been being established at various stages, and now we need to standardize the cultural services, but we cannot request from communities to introduce this standardization immediately. This law number 1432 provides minimal standards and subventions from the national budget. This will be transition period till 2024 for all the communities, which would allow them to satisfy the minimal standards and work for the future for the better level of cultural services. I'm very grateful for this manual. It describes the standards, the regulations. Of course, they require further development, but it's very cool that today those communities which were amalgamated recently, they are not familiar with the old standards from 1997, 1994, 1987. And when it comes to the cinemas, to cinema theaters, when it comes to local clubs, when it comes to the local museums, etc. Natalia mentioned that the manual describes how the cost of the service has to be determined. This is very much demanded methodology because quite often we are approached by local communities. Back in 2020, we extended the list of paid cultural services that might be delivered by local communities. This is very good because local communities now do not need to deal with all that problems. This is just the head of the local club who is able to calculate the cost of cultural services based on the Cabinet of Ministers methodology. And I hope that the manual would allow us to develop practical methodology, practical procedure, how that could be done in local communities. I believe this manual will become very practical for all the communities in Ukraine. I've read the first volume of the manual and I was very positively impressed with it. Currently, it fully coincides with what our ministry is preoccupied now. We are working on the scenario for the cultural development of communities. This actually closely corresponds to your second volume. This only shows that all the experts think alike and that we are ready to produce regulations which coincide with the requirements of local community members. Thank you, Marina. That work, which is already done by the Ministry of Culture in the area of regulations, is huge. For example, this is true about minimal standards. minimal standards in the area of cultural services are ahead of many other ministries. For example, we do not have minimal standards for many other services which are under the auspice of other ministries. I understand that each community is unique. They may deviate from the standards, but the minimal standard is very important. Dear colleagues, we have received some questions. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Roslav Shafranovich, head of Ivanevska Territorial Community, and ask him this question from Vera Yanchuk from our chat. What does it mean, improvement of the water supply and water maintenance service? As far as I know, your community had chosen the water supply service as one of your top priorities, and actually this is the trend in many communities. Water supply is among 3 top priorities in almost all of them. So what is your vision? What is your answer to this question? Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? So what did it mean to improve the water supply service? In our community, we have this very document which we call not the service improvement plan, but the service establishment plan. From the very beginning, we realized that 4,000 of people in our 5 settlements had no centralized water supply or water discharge system, and we found out that the old Soviet pipes were inappropriate, and we had to start from scratch. In our development strategy, the water supply service was one of the priorities. In our community, we do not have any rivers, and from the very beginning, we started to organize a meeting in each village, in each settlement. And we found out that people had no perception of the problem, and we are in the area, we are located in the area with difficult natural conditions, highly influenced by the climate change. And we had, first of all, to convince people working on the service design. We realized that it was extremely difficult service. When you deal with other services like reconstruction of the roads, etc., you are improving something which exists, while with the water supply, we had to start from scratch. Implementing that huge project, we had to dig up some roads, which created inconveniences. And at some stage, people showed doubts that they needed the service. But nevertheless, in result of that, we have the 10 water collectors in some settlements. We restored the water wells and started to build up water pipes, 25 kilometers. And here the Dobra program allocated money for this. And today in each village we have the water collectors, and 50% of the community territory is covered by water pipes network. When we look back at the 3 years ago, when we started that work, I could hardly believe that this could was able to be implemented. And but as Natalia mentioned, step by step we reached today's situation. And that's true, that communication with the community members, with the people, is of primarily importance. The more you communicate to people your plans, your vision, your goals, the less problems you would have in the future. Now, 2 villages are connected to the water supply. The 3rd village will be connected later. And further on, we would work on the water quality, etc. But I believe that this will be done gradually. And now, by the way, we have not only the water supply plan, but also the the roads improvement plan and the solid waste management plan. These are actually all very important documents. All these 3 elements are reflected in our strategy, development strategy, and I believe that we should have the improvement plan for all the services delivered by local community, because this improves the situation in the community. Of course, during pandemic, the communication worsened, of course, because we are a small community. We cannot contact with people offline. And while this live communication is very important. Also, I would like to thank to the Dobra program who trained us how to write our plans properly. I would like to thank to Maxim, to Mr. Mikhailo Kozarev, and to all the experts who used to work with us and allowed us to carry out this very important work for our community. Thank you, Ruslana. We are also very grateful to you. Ivanivska community is a good example to many communities. This is a small community, and we all know how it is difficult to finance either water supply or waste management in a small local community. This is actually a combination of the resources of local people, local community, our program budget, and the oblast level budget, the regional budget. And I hope that the water supply problem is almost resolved today. What is very important about the water supply service? Because this is actually an important element of the healthcare in community, because healthcare and environment are very directly connected in this context. Now I would like to give the floor to Alexei Rybakun, Deputy Head of the Amalgamated Territorial Communities Association. This association represents big number of communities. This is very active member of our program, and perhaps you would ask some questions. Sergei Loboyko, what local services could be digitalized, and who has to pay for this digitalization? Whether local community, national authorities, the Ministry of Digitalization, the Ministry of informational culture, etc. So this is, as of now, the question to you. If it's not a question to you, then we will address this issue. Thank you for this participation. In the association, I'm responsible for the platform of human resources, administrative services, and e-governance. As of now, this had become the regular thing in our association, although at the stage of re-establishing administrative services some years ago, this was a challenge. And while now members of our association, having found good new approaches and having found good partners among our immediate Western neighbors, learned how to deliver good administrative services, and now we are able to deliver administrative services at a level which is not worse than in Germany. So we have reached actually good level in digitalization of administrative services, and this was confirmed especially during pandemic. Nevertheless, there is always space for perfection, for improvement, and the requests and demands of people tend to change. And what was satisfactory 3 years ago is seen as less satisfactory today. The manual which we are presenting today was presented in our association some time ago. And as members of the association, we had the chance to discuss it, and it was a general opinion that this manual is a big success. And it is a big success because it is very practical. It is very close to the everyday needs of local leaders. Even with water supply, Ruslan presented to us extreme situation where they had no water supply at all. But usually the situation is better, but it is poorly managed. And the same is true about lightning. And in these areas, when public hearings are being organized, you face the same practical issues. For example, with waste management, we started asking questions. What is a typical service for local government? How the service is perceived by the service deliverers, by the service recipients, and we found out that there was a big gap between those two opinions, and that we needed more experience. So we had to look for new visions and experience. While now, today, your manual offers a lot of perspectives, a lot of visions, and actually very practical steps to tackle standard problems for each community. You even offer specific strategies for each particular service. While in some communities where they do not have strategies or have old strategies, they had no ideas what the real problems were. And now, having tried how to resolve this or that problem in practice, they can found better vision. They can gain better vision of the services that they need in the local community, and they can review the strategic development plans from the very beginning. Sometimes you feel that you need more people, that you need more experienced team to work on the problem. You need better human resources, better quality of human resources, and you understand that you have to work with those people whom you have. And I like very much your approach when you ask the question, if you want to do something, first think about people who would do this, who can do this. And unfortunately, we never asked these questions. We never tried to compare the quality and quantity indicators. We never tried to understand what is better to improve the number of positions in the administration or to improve the quality of people. In our association, we have some grant projects and the local community leaders underestimate these small programs. That is, my message is as follows. The proper assessment of capacity is extremely, extremely important. As for our association, we believe that this manual would be very, very useful for the work in your communities. This is a powerful tool, but the use of this tool would exclusively depend on the community leaders. This is a universal tool for all sorts of services, either in healthcare or educational services, or you can apply the roads. I think that some indicators which are used in, for example, educational services, in terms of the student success in state examination, etc., says nothing about the quality of education which is delivered in the local community, about the level of happiness, so to say, level of satisfaction of that students, etc. So this manual would allow us to use this accumulated experience and practices. Your program covered 10 oblasts in Ukraine, and we as association would be happy to introduce this manual in all other regions of Ukraine, because this is a good way for us to improve our work. That's why we highly evaluate the level of this manual. We are very grateful to this for this initiative, and we are ready to promote implementation and use of this manual. Thank you, Alexei, for your support and for your high appreciation. Our program is temporal, and the Dubra program is approaching to its final stage, while the self-governance initiatives, our methodologies at the local level will promote local development for the years ahead. As of now, we do not have further questions. I am very grateful to Mr. Shershov for his comment about digitalization. He mentioned that digitalization is the area of the Ministry of Informatization, and they are qualified to answer such questions. Now I would like to give the floor to the Ministry of Infrastructure, to Mr. Andrei Gritsak. Each year we organize a survey asking a question: what are the biggest concern for local residents in communities? And this is now the 5th year in a row when maintenance of roads and pavements are the biggest concern for local people. Andrei, perhaps you would explain to us how this could be resolved. Quite often, local communities do not have enough financial resources to revive the local infrastructure because this is a huge omission of the previous development stage. As we know, now the infrastructure is among top priorities for the government and the president. Could you comment on that? Thank you for this opportunity. I would very briefly describe the situation. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, I was unable to hear the presentation. But what I can say about infrastructure. Since 2018, we have been introducing decentralization infrastructure. That is, we split the responsibility for the categories of responsibilities between the central and local authorities for the roads. Ukravtodor as of today manages international and national highways, while local administrations are responsible for the regional and local roads. As for the municipal roads, they remained under the auspice of local communities as it was in the past. So Ukravtodor manages 46.6 thousand kilometers of roads. Local roads amount to 122,000 of kilometers. The municipal roads amount to 240,000 kilometers. From 2019, we have the State Road Fund. This is the permanent source for reconstruction of the roads. This fund is financed from the excise money which come from customs. Also highway fare, fines paid by drivers and companies, and some concession fees, etc. That amount of money is not insufficient even for the minimal works to maintain the transportation network. We have a methodology approved jointly with the Ministry of Finance. This is a methodology for the reconstruction and maintenance of roads. This methodology sets minimal basic resources for the maintenance of roads. For Ukravtodor, for local self-administrations and local governments. The majority of roads were constructed in 1950s, 1960s, and of course the life term of those roads had already finished, and we do not have sufficient resources to make a large-scale renovation of those roads immediately. That's why the renovation is split into stages. The Cabinet of Ministers in March 2018 had approved the program for reconstruction of national highways. It comprises measures planned till 2022 and sets the list of financial contributors to the reconstruction of the national roads. As for the local roads, local administrations were assigned with the task to make strategies for the local or regional roads reconstruction. So regional administrations produce such programs and submit them for approval. Quite often we are approached by the local self-governments and appeal about the reconstruction of roads. They are poorly informed about implementation of the regional road construction programs. Local regions, regional administrations, local self-governments, they are authorized to review their own reconstruction programs, and local authorities should appeal to them and request from regional administrations proper monitoring of these programs. Now about subventions. The State Road Fund provides that 35% of that of its money should be provided to the local level for maintenance of local roads. In 2018, the total amount of that resources was at the level of 11.5 billion hryvnia. In 2019, it was 14 billion hryvnia, in 2020, 21 billion hryvnia. This year, this amount was cut down because in December, alongside with the national budget approval, some provisions of the budget code were reviewed, and the amount of money coming to the road fund from excise fees was cut down, and that's why the road fund was cut down too. And this year, the subventions, total subventions amount will be at the level of 18 billion hryvnia. And but in previous years, more money was allocated to the road fund, and due to that fact, we would deliver 3.3 additional billion to the subventions to local levels for the road repairs. Now, about funding sources. described the State Road Fund as one of the sources for overhauls of roads at the local level, but this is not the only source. Local self-governments can finance their own repairs from their local budgets. Besides that, in the past, we did some work, and due to the support in the parliament, we had passed some novelties, and now local self-governments can make external borrowings and local borrowings for the needs of road repairs. And state administrations in the regions local state administrations can redirect money from national budget subventions to the debt servicing of that external and internal borrowings made by local administrations for the sake of road construction. Quite often we are approached by local self-governments with the request of novelties. They ask to deliver money directly to them. But we cannot do this because the need is huge and the resources are scarce, and this would mean only the dissolution of resources. That's why we advise them to think carefully about priorities, and we offer methodology for setting these priorities. In brief, that's all that I wanted to share with you. Now I'm ready to answer questions. Thank you, Andriy. Yeah, as of now, we do not have any questions. We understand that there is overall lack of resources, both at the central and local level. When we work with the local communities, quite often they say we lack resources for the repair of our local road. While I provide the counter example. Well, you repair the road, but there is an old water pipe under it, and you have to bring repair a team each week, dig up this new road and repair that water pipe. That is, you have to make very careful decisions when you want to invest millions of hryvnia. We had answered all the questions asked in chat. Dear colleagues, I'm very grateful to all the participants of our today's event. You may upload this manual by the link below our presentation, and we plan to print a small number of these manuals and disseminate these printed copies, hard copies, among the interested parties. We all know that there is a huge amount of problems. I'm very grateful to all those who joined us for discussion. I'm very grateful to all those who work with the communities and who to tackle the problems at the local level. I believe that eventually everything will be fine and Ukraine will become more successful. Thank you for your contribution.